And we are back without a vengeance. Welcome to the Sunday Ultra Early edition of the Space Weather. We're looking at the sun at 171 angstroms here. We see some activity rising finally there, right near the solar equator, most likely some cycle 24 activity as it's so close to the equator. As a diffuse coronal hole faces the Earth, we see a coronal mass ejection headed toward the Earth, as well as one headed toward stereo A. Let's give you a quick look at that. And here's the view from stereo A's coronagraph. You can see the coronal mass ejection that does appear to have an Earth-facing component here on the 25th, which we covered on the 25th 2 days ago. And then you see another one here, not Earth-facing, and you can see a halo around the coronagraph here. So stereo A is expected to get hit by this coronal mass ejection, probably coming out of that active region. And let's let that play through twice, just so you can visualize what's going on out there. And let's look at the 304 angstroms view. Filament in the northwest is still there. And here's that active region in the east. And let's move on to some more data. But first, let's ask if you're a Patreon. Are you a Patreon? Thanks, patrons, for being associate producers of the show. We're going to look at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard real quick at the LASCO C3. And again, that coronal mass ejection does appear to have an Earth-facing component. You can see there is a bit of a halo coming out there. So we do expect to see a spike in the solar wind from that in the next day or two, probably by tomorrow. NASA's reporting that it's fairly low speed. I don't know how they get that it's low speed. It looked like it accelerated pretty heavily at the end. Let's move on to more data like the X-ray flux, which is totally flatlined. And here's the real-time solar wind. We just saw a phi angle of 180 degrees kick off. That diffuse coronal hole south of the equator has magnetically connected right as we did show prep. If you think the sun is conscious, what would you ask it or say to it? Solar wind density has dropped down to 1.25 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind-like density. However, solar wind speed remains elevated from that coronal hole wind stream, 594 kilometers per second, as the electron storm kicks off exactly as forecasted. There's the ACE data corroborating the DISCOVER data. Let's talk about the power grid. In California, it's on fire. California's on fire. And they're having massive power outages as forecasted once again. PG&E trying to shut off the power to reduce their own liability. We have included links to fire.ca.gov/incidents. Anyway, there's the current state of affairs. Let's zoom that out one click here. And there's the visual analysis of the fires. Kincaid Fire, 25,000 plus acres, only 10% contained, at least as of yesterday. Anyway, there are the incidents in California. Here's the PG&E power grid map, and talk about a jumbled up mess. This looks like a complete disaster. And I don't know what the pink question marks, what the pink magnifying glasses mean. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's PG&E shutting off the power intentionally, but that's an awful lot of information to be on the map, I would say. Looks like the power situation is far from good in California. Here's a geospace magnetosphere movie, moving out a little farther from home here, out back into space. And pretty steady as we see that increase, that coronal hole wind stream there around 600 kilometers per second, producing a fairly steady pressure environment. Nothing to really write home about there. And here are the ground magnetic perturbations. We cover these every day. 4 hours worth of data for your geomagnetic understanding pleasure. As this planet has 2 north poles, one over Siberia, one over northern Canada, and one creeping in the south into the southern Indian Ocean, it looks like. And 10.7 centimeter radial flux holding steady at 69 solar flux units. Magnetometer is all over the place, as it's pretty hard for it to be smooth when there's a bunch of protons striking the magnetosphere. Speaking of the magnetosphere, how about the whole heliosphere? Here's the Gong 2 data, and it looks like the north solar polar field has weakened a little bit, and we could be experiencing a current sheet polarity crossing at any moment. Here's the last frame, and it looks like there's a bit of a tug-of-war going on there. Got to watch that active region that's rising, as that is affecting the magnetic environment. For you new viewers out there, this is stereo A, this is stereo B, and this data is derived from their magnetometers as well as about 51 ground-based magnetometers on planet Earth. Please leave a comment if you're viewing from another planet, solar system, plane of existence, universe, galaxy, spacecraft, etc. KP index has just come off of geomagnetic unrest back down to a KP3. Electron flux still quite high as forecasted, and no surprises there. Going to stay high here for at least another day or so. And the relativistic electrons, this is the greater than 2 mega electron volts, has just leveled off. Very high levels, not as high as it was a couple weeks ago, and certainly not as high as it was in August of 2018, but you can see finally leveling off there. Charging hazards are significant, and there's the locations of those. Both Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn showing some charging hazards. Here's the F2 layer, the ionosphere movie. Excuse me. And we'll let that play through, and then we'll look at the last frame. It looks pretty normal. A little discharge in the northern hemisphere night. Nothing to really write home about there. Here's the latest image. This one from 7:15 UT. We did see some auroras over the Great Lakes, by the way. Folks, check out spaceweather.com if you want to look at that. Last 24 hours of earthquakes included a 5.3 at Samoa. Looks like it's northeast of Tonga there. We're only going over 4+ magnitude quakes as the 7 magnitude earthquake drought continues, folks. We see this 4.0 at Mexico. Here's a 4.9 at New Caledonia. 5.0 at the South Sandwich Islands. We've seen a recent uptick there in the past week or two. Here's a 4.3 at Russia. Actually closer to Japan, really. Really a lull in earthquakes, folks. And again, the phi angle has just switched to 180 degrees. A magnetic connection to that coronal hole. Another risk factor for earthquakes. We see another quake out here in the Aleutian Islands. Could be the largest one of the past 24 at a 5.4 magnitude. Way out in the Aleutians. Next we see a 4.5 at Indonesia. This one coming in at 2126 UT. No deep quakes yet, at least above a 4 magnitude. And here's a 5.0 at Indonesia, 4.4 at Indonesia, that one at depth. We have been seeing some deep quakes there, and my favorite spot to end the 7 magnitude earthquake drought is still Western South America. Heads up if you're located there. Anyway, that deep quake coming in at 225 UT today. Depth is 176.9 kilometers. Next we see a 4.6 in central Alaska. as a bunch of quakes kicking off in Alaska. Shout out Alaskan viewers. Thanks for leaving comments. Brett, 4.3 out in the Aleutians there once again. And the last quake coming in right as we did show prep. A deep quake at Peru, 4.2 magnitude at 118 kilometers. Let's look at the windy.com pressure maps. It's only -1 degree at McMurdo Station in Antarctica right now. And that's -1 degree Celsius, by the way. Must be global warming, folks. And just let that advance one day as a massive anticyclone is over the northwestern U.S. and southwestern Canada. Looks like it's finally going to start to break up. And there's where things will be at 1700 Zulu tomorrow. And I don't know why Windy doesn't like my tab advancement, but for some reason it doesn't. And volcano rundown. Klyuchevskoy remains on the list, exploding. Little uptick there at Klyuchevskoy on the Kamchatka Peninsula, producing a 20,000-foot ash plume. Mount Aso, 6,000-foot ash plume there. Sakurajima, 8,000-foot ash plume there. Dukono exploding, 7,000-foot ash plume there. Revenador exploding, 15,000-foot plume there. Sabancaya exploding. Please do not do a pole vault over Sabancaya. We need the views, and it's exploding and producing a 25,000-foot ash plume. You better be a really good pole vaulter to pull that one off. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. Right near the new moon. Looks like new moon tomorrow, and there's where things will be in 1 week. Here's where stuff is above my head. Let's hit refresh. It's 3:23. Do you know where your constellations are? Personally, I like to draw in the ecliptic. Check out in-the-sky.org to put together your own sky map. And if you're interested in where the lightning is, well, there's where it is. Check out lightningmaps.org next time you hear thunder. Looks like a thunderstorm out in the middle of the North Atlantic. Is it the perfect storm? Are you viewing our video from a boat with a bunch of hunks like Marky Mark and George Clooney? Here's a U.S. Doppler radar. It's one of our value-added services. And it continues to snow in South Dakota, who's probably not appreciating that, as well as Wyoming, Montana, Nevada, Idaho, some Utah, right around the Salt Lake. Making for salty roads and salty people. Salty crop harvesting. Here's your U.S. water vapor map. You can see dry air is looking like it's going to take its good old time pushing the rain away from where I am. And if you're wondering where I am, located in eastern Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. A unique spot to be where a glacier was in sight at the last ice age, just 20 miles north of where I live. As I started studying things like geology when I was about 8 years old, wondering how that catastrophe cycle could do what it does, how those glaciers could form there, how we have moraines all over the Blue Mountain. Anyway, there's a water vapor map. Let's just zoom in on this zone here over northern Illinois. A perfect example of a cyclonic, anticyclonic reaction going on here. Part of the sky wants to rotate clockwise, part of the sky wants to rotate counterclockwise, and you get turbulence, folks. For instance, if you're flying a plane across Iowa and northern Illinois and Indiana right at this moment, you are going to see turbulence big time as your air density changes massively. Check out the pressure gradients that must be going on there. Shout out if you're viewing the videos from Iowa. And here are the jet stream maps on Null School. We see an extremely powerful jet stream blowing some cold air down into the central Atlantic there. Very concentrated jet stream there just off the coast of, I'll say, Maryland. About 1,000 miles off the coast. Anyway, there are the jet streams in the western world. Here are the jet streams in the eastern world. And let's move on, as there's still more stuff to cover, and we're trying to keep this one as short as possible. So welcome to the That Is Censored, and that is a sinkhole, where we encourage our viewers to understand the distinction between their E and a hole in the ground. Are you familiar with Nextdoor.com? Nancy Pelosi here is. Perhaps if you don't have a Nextdoor in your neighborhood, perhaps set up an account. Now we've got about 250 locals in my neighborhood, as I had to set up the account. We don't have one here. This is a great way for networking your neighborhood. This is part of prepping, folks. And it's a great way to do stuff like sell stuff, give stuff away, trade, barter, find out what's going on in the local news, find out about crime reports before they hit the newspaper, etc. Nextdoor.com. If you don't have one, become the Nextdoor lead in your neighborhood, as I did. It's a great way to network your neighborhood, and a very important step in prepping. Are you aware that al-Baghdadi appears to have been killed in northern Syria? Now, I do want to steal Trump's thunder, because we need the views, and Trump has tens of millions of followers on Twitter. So, in any case, it looks like all indications are in that al-Baghdadi was killed by U.S. forces in Syria. So that appears to be the announcement Trump is going to be making today, as it looks like Iran and Iraq have been informed of this. Now, if you're not familiar with who al-Baghdadi is, he is the caliph of ISIS, the man responsible for organizing the Islamic State and creating a caliphate in a portion of Iraq, Syria, and I think just Iraq and Syria. Please leave a comment if you're familiar with the caliphate, as Baghdadi's death is probably going to be a bit of a blow to the caliphate. Thanks to our new subscribers on YouTube, and please don't forget to press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Please share with your social media, and share with your local physics nerd, astronomy club, etc. As Google pays us exactly nothing, since it's a massive, massive scam designed to spy on you. So please support the channel via places like PayPal, links below the video, Hemp Lucid, the spaced out CBD campaign specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers, but mainly on Patreon. Join at the $9.99 a month level if you want to see our updates long before everybody else, and more exclusive content always coming and being planned for our gold level patrons. Thanks again, patrons, for being executive producers of the show. Did you watch our censored versus sinkhole video yesterday about the autumn crops? And did you watch our video? Are you aware that we're on BitChute when we have little failures with YouTube's junkware? The videos are also on BitChute. They usually uploaded just about half an hour after the videos here on YouTube are. I shouldn't say here on YouTube if you're already watching the videos on BitChute. Also, check us out on Minds.com. If you like social media, check out Minds.com, the future of social media. Minds.com/smAsho is where we're located, where you won't be censored. You won't be shadow banned. You might even get 500,000 plus views as you lose subscribers like we do. Have you ever checked out Galaxy Zoo on the Zooniverse.org project? Check out some of the galaxies we classified yesterday and today. Here's a major merger. Here's an extremely irregular galaxy going on with some overlap there. I'm not sure if that's a quasar in the foreground or the background or what's going on, but another interesting, irregularly cored galaxy, to say the least. Check this one out. Massive dust lane there in a split core, sort of a semi-edge-on view of a galaxy. And lastly, check out this one. It's got some sort of a really bright artifact in the foreground, but we actually did classify that one regardless. So check that out, Zooniverse.org's Galaxy Zoo project. We need humans to classify galaxies, such as this one here. A pretty plain elliptical. Actually, something going on in the core of that one. Will you be the citizen scientist to classify that galaxy? Let's talk about Jeepers Creepers. We haven't watched it yet, but it's going to happen. It's the next movie that we're going to review. So perhaps check this one out from 2001. Not sure if it's a demon or an alien or some sort of extraplanar entity or what the deal is, but it's a pretty creepy movie. And it's like a Birdman. It's pretty scary, pretty demonic. And so check that out, perhaps for your Halloween viewing pleasure. And thanks, Smash Team. And please stay tuned for one bonus feature. Going back to the local yellow dwarf here, looking at the 193 angstrom view, staring right down the barrel of a diffuse coronal hole there. Pretty well-defined portion. A little bit of association with the South Pole coronal hole there. And this active region rising on the east is something to keep an eye on throughout the day. Pun intentional. We are out. We had more stuff to cover, but we ran out of time. So look for more videos later. Thanks again, Smash Team, patrons, viewers, subscribers, etc. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway, just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back and that atherosclerosis absent from your veins.